Welcome to the Council and Committee meeting for this day, January 22nd, 2019. I would like to remind everyone that our meetings are web streamed and televised. And for those in attendance, I would ask that you ensure your communication devices are silenced. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? None noted. Before I start this meeting, I just wanted to share with you an item that I think is important for all of us. And as the first chairperson of council and committee of this newly elected council, my conscience begs me to share this workplace information with you. We together, elected Norfolk Council, appointed committees, and staff, share an obligation to uphold the following Norfolk County policies and procedures. Bylaw number 217-83, a bylaw to govern the procedures of the Council of the Corporation of Norfolk County. Policy EBS 53, Code of Conduct for Council Members, its committees, and local boards. Policy HR-01, Code of Conduct Policy. Policy HR-04, Respectful Workplace and Violence Prevention Policy. Policy CAO-10, Council Staff Relations Policy. Moving on, do we have approval changes to the agenda? Can I have a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda as presented? We have Councilor Rabbits and Mayor Chop. Those in favor? Thank you. Consent items, we have none. We also do not have any presentations today, so we'll move into closed session. Can I have a mover and a seconder to move into closed session? Councilor Chop and Councilor Michele. The committee move into closed session at 3:02 p.m. to discuss matters pursuant to Section 239(2) B, C, D, E, and F of the Municipal Act 2001, SO 2001 C25, as the subject matter pertains to personnel matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, labor relations or employee negotiations, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, and advise that that is subject to the solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. Discussion? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. We'll move into closed session. Okay, we're back. We just spent the last 2.5 hours in closed session, and I need a mover and a seconder to recess the closed session at 5:42 p.m. and reconvene in open session. Councillor Taylor and Councillor Rabbits, those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And we're moving on to the deputation, and we'll have Dr. Agnes Schlanger from the Land Development Corporation to the podium to speak on her deputation respecting property tax increment incentive tax program. Okay. Okay, Ed, if you'd like to take the podium there. Yes. Sure. Okay. So, sir, you have 10 minutes, and I will remind you when 9 minutes is up. Okay? Ed? Go ahead. You can push that gray talk button there, and there you go.
Okay. On behalf of Dr. Shangler and our group, good day to you today, the Honorable Mayor and Council. First of all, I have to give you all congratulations to the Mayor and the Council members on your outstanding achievement to become the new Mayor and Council of Norfolk County. Wonderful. And today we're here to make a presentation request with respect to the 5-point prorated property tax grant exemption program with respect to our 5.2 acre brownfield site, which is located at Cedar Street in Queensway. Our understanding, the purpose of the property increment grant is to provide an economic incentive for the rehabilitation of properties by providing a grant to the owner of the property to pay a portion of the local taxes, excluding education taxes, attributed to the increased assessment over a 5-year period. I'm going to move on to the overview summary, but I'll get back to the tax increment program. I'd like to go over that so you have a good understanding. Since 2013, we've been dealing with this property, which is going on 5 years. It's an infill. The existing 5.2 acre brownfield site was proposed to be developed in 2013 as a residential low-rise seniors apartment, which includes a full basement, full green grass landscaping, side, front, and backyards. Due to the contamination of various issues such as underlying peat moss, etc., a phase 1 and 2 report was requested and completed November 2013 by the previous residential developer at that time to determine the level of contamination. The report stated the level of contamination, peat moss, etc. on the site would not allow residential development. Residential development was denied based on the phase 1 and 2 reports. So the previous residential land developer then decided to abort their interest in developing this 5.2 acre brownfield site in the spring of 2014. Since the site is zoned commercial service and based on the approved geotech report phase 3 by SPL Consultants WSP Canada Environmental Engineers out of Toronto and in concert with the Ministry of Environment, the alternative was to develop this 5.2 acre site into a commercial plaza by the way of intensive rehabilitation, ground improvement, by reinforcement, remediation, peat moss stabilization under the plaza footing and the floor, including 1.2 acre concrete slab on grade, no basement. Therefore, and a 4 acre slab on grade asphalt parking lot. By providing the necessary work as stated above, this would in turn encapsulate the entire 5.2 acre site and solve any underlying problems to develop a commercial plaza on this site. So at that time, SDL Corporation as a commercial land developer purchased the property conditionally July 2014 to proceed with a full scope of a due diligence, which is to prepare and assist us to proceed to develop this site. The purpose of this development by SLD Corporation is to clean up, revitalize this commercial desolated 5.2 acre commercial brownfield site land into a piece of productive functional land by redeveloping the site into a retail commercial concrete on grade plaza. This plaza will in turn result in the creation of economic development and jobs for the benefit of the town of Simcoe and its citizens. The number of jobs anticipated would be around 60 to 90 full-time, part-time jobs. Could be your cousin working there, could be a family student could be working there. So keep that in mind. Furthermore, the millions of dollars that will be invested and spent for the construction of this commercial plaza in the town of Simcoe, creating more jobs, up to $12 million will be spent to redevelop this site. I want to point out, we do not benefit from creating these newly created jobs. We create jobs by developing commercial buildings and plazas. The town will certainly be generating substantial income stream from the municipal taxes revenue collected from the development of this plaza on an ongoing long-term basis. We would like to point out and make it clear with respect to this commercial plaza development, we do look at the town to work hand in hand with our group so we could achieve a successful outcome with the redevelopment of this desolate brownfield site to finally a productive, successful development for the benefit of the town of Simcoe and most for its citizens and also the developers' opportunity. I will move on to my conclusion. SDL Corporation is seeking and requires a tax-deferred tax exemption by the way of a 5-year prorated tax deferral over a period of 5 years once the plaza is completed and built out. Once the plaza is completed and MPAC has completed their final tax assessment of the newly built complex, to assist us and to provide the developer with an economic development incentive and some tax relief for a period of 5 years to offset some of the costly costs incurred such as an increase in taxes, commercial ground improvement, rehabilitation improvement, piece march remediation under the footings, venting under the floor plaza with respect to the plaza development. This is very important. I want to point one thing out here. Furthermore, MPACT has acknowledged and agreed and accepted the fact is these 5.2 acre commercial land in 217 has been given a tax exemption. Our original taxes when we bought the property was $9,600. So based on their investigation, the municipal tax reassessed this site. Therefore, their final conclusion was to reduce the Norfolk municipal land tax on this commercial site 40%. They've acknowledged it, our issues here. We believe, wholly here and rightly, based on MPAC's reassessment of this commercial land, that the sitting council follow MPAC's lead as the foremost assessment priority of Ontario and consider to facilitate a 5-year prorated tax deferral exemptions once the new plaza is completed and MPAC has completed their final tax assessment. Could be in 2020 or 2021. It's based off a prorated, a percentage every year. In 5 years, you're back up to, let's use 100,000. Let's say they assess the plaza when it's finished $100,000. So at the present time, we're paying $5,600 in taxes. Once a plaza is built, it's $100,000 a year. I'm using $100,000 for a hypothetical number. It would probably be maybe more than that. So then it's a floating prorated. It comes from zero the first year after it's built. Then we pay $20,000 the second year, $40,000 the third, $60,000 the fourth, $80,000 a fifth, and we're back to the normal $100,000 per year. The land's been sitting there at this point in time. Let's say we're doing $5,600 a year. If it sits vacant for 10 years, you'll end up with $56,000. If we're
1 minute
based,
left. 1 minute left.
1 minute left. If we're based on $100,000 a year, your gain will be, after the prorated tax rate, you'll see $700,000, and thereafter you're going to see a tax rate, hike in tax rate from then on, with the plaza that sits there for generations or decades. I would like to point out, once the plaza is completed and developed, the municipal tax rise will be 20 times as our taxes are today. Also, Chris Baird at the pre-consultation meeting in November 2014, July 24, 2017, February 2018, addressed this question, stated the fact we would be able to assist with a 5-year prorated tax rate for your project from 2014.
Okay, time's up.
One more?
Great. Go ahead.
My last.
Finish up quick.
I would like to see a 5-year prorated tax exemption should be included in our site plan agreement draft. That's what we have in our hand now. It's the only thing that's missing, and I've asked for it for 2 years.
Okay,
Thank you.
ready for questions? And I don't recall ever that we've had a request of this nature, but we'll see where it goes.
Thank you.
So, questions to Mr. Bain? Mayor Chop?
214.
Purchased in 2014. And have you been working with the planning department since 2014 on this?
In 5 years, yes.
And you haven't completed a site plan?
Yeah, our
You're
site plan's completed.
Just
We
completed?
have a draft plan agreement in our hands.
When was that completed?
In May.
So it took 5 years to
Pretty
get site
well,
plan
4.5
approval.
years.
On that basis, given that it's been 5 years in a site plan approval process, and that costs money to carry a property over all those years, this is something that I would support. And I have heard of the of the grant program being issued previously, so.
Finished? Yep. Further questions to Mr. Bain? Okay, I see your, Tom? Yes? Councilor
Thank you,
Shelley.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Bain, you mentioned there were going to be a number of jobs created by this plaza.
Yes, sir.
What types of jobs will they be?
They're going to be retail jobs. There'll be 35 stores there approximately, with 35 owners. It's a condominium project, theoretically. You can buy the unit or you can lease the unit. So we have water allocation for 35 stores. Each store will have its own toilets and things in that nature. Doctor's office, chiropractors, things in that nature, restaurants, things in that nature. There's quite a few restaurants want to come in franchises. So if you have a franchise coming in, Wild Wings, you're going to have, or a breakfast place or things like that, and various types of gyms and things like that. There's a list of occupancy that they're looking for space there. So you're looking at 35 owners plus a staff of 3 to 4 per store, added up. I'm being very, very, what can I say? I'm not overreaching on jobs. I'm in the window, 60 to 90. So if you have 35 owners, 35 stores, so you have got 35 people working in the store that are the owners, they're going to hire 2-3 people. So you're into the 100 on that basis. And not only, the development here will take us 9 months to build it out. We're going to spend the 10 to 12 million in town with all our trades. We're using all town trades. Concrete, steel, we're buying our concrete off the concrete fellow next door. Miles of cubic yards of concrete, things in that. We've already started this project in the respect that we hired a contractor in town. We bought 13,000 cubic meters of fill to fill up half of the land because it was 6 feet low. So we built it up in 216. And from there on. Does that help you out?
Very much, thank you.
We're getting some hands up now. We'll go to Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Bain, I'm wondering if you could speak to when, if all goes well, your development will be right beside you here.
Sorry, I got
On
lost
your-
here.
And I apologize if I missed it, but when do you anticipate your development would be finished?
Well, right now we're doing borehole tests on sampling right now. It's going to take us, because my engineering firm, as you can see the list there, there's 14 engineers working on this project. It was very costly. It's probably close to $500,000. So at the end of the day, for the engineerings and the things like that nature and design work and everything else, it's going to take us from the day when we put the shovel in. And by the way, we have to road widen Queensway. We have to put another lane in the middle. We didn't anticipate that, but that's in the build-up. So let's say we started, I'm going to use a hypothetical situation because I'm going to be there another 4 months to do the testing, the borehole testing now. They wanted us to wait till winter time because they had to start it in the winter to finish out in the spring. So hopefully they'll be finished by spring. So we started by spring, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December, 9 months, 10 at the most.
Okay.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair, to staff, Mr. Baird, would you be able to fill me in on your conversation that you had with Mr. Bain when you alluded to the fact that this was something the county was able to help with?
Most certainly, through the chair. Mr. Bain and Dr. Schlanger came to the county a number of years ago with this project, and as part of our initial discussions, we laid out some of the incentives that were available to develop the site. The letter that's contained on page 6 in the information, or in the agenda, talks about a number of community improvement plan incentives, of which Mr. Garwood is here. He could certainly speak to those along with Mrs. Dusling. One of the main incentives there related to the redevelopment of a brownfield site that would equate to almost $340,000 of savings to develop on that location. At the time, and this goes back some time, as part of our community improvement plan incentives, there was a program called a property tax increment grant. That program has since been revised last year by council, and it is now subject to council consideration going forward, just because it is a little bit more complex in its multi-year financing and so on.
Thank you. This sounds like a great development. Thank you.
Okay, and we're moving on to Councillor Huffman.
Thank you, through the chair. So I'm horrible with directions, so I just want to be very clear visually of the space that I have in it. So this is the end of Cedar Street as
It's fronting on the Queensway and backing
okay, so
off
it's
the Cedar.
fronting on the, okay, because
Yes.
in my mind, I'm thinking Cedar Street, and I'm thinking aesthetically, what would be in front of it would not be very,
No, right beside,
really, okay,
right beside me, right adjacent to me on Cedar Street
right.
is a fellow that was going to put the seniors' home on this property, then move to the
okay.
back of me.
Oh,
And he's already built 6 stories there.
Hmm.
And he's building another 7, and we're going to create a pathway for the seniors to get into the plaza.
oh, nice, nice. And in terms of the businesses, you've alluded to how many you think, will be employed, and it's obviously a retail plaza, and it could have doctors and other healthcare professionals in there. Have you spoken to any potential franchises or anything, or you don't have to give names or anything?
I got to tell you something you may get startled of. 2 years ago, I had this plaza fully leased and sold. They couldn't wait another year and a half. They all walked.
And was that delay and the reason for that delay?
Approvals.
Okay, thank you.
It was sad.
Okay, Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question was actually along the same lines as Mr. Chair, whoever I'm talking to, as Councillor Huffman's question. So,
Okay. Back to Mayor Chop.
I just want to point this out for kind of the rest of our councilors, that I hope this conversation is remembered as we move forward here and in future changes that we're looking at making 5 years to obtain site plan approval is deeply concerning. And there is a reason why people don't want to come and they don't want to develop in Norfolk County. And this is a big part of that problem. You just heard that, you know, people, they had the facility rented and it's no longer rented because it just shouldn't take this long to get things done. So I hope that, you know, in the coming days, in the coming months, in the coming years together, as we look at fixing these problems, that, you know, this is a classic story that we remember going forward.
Any other questions? I don't see any other questions. So you may be seated, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you kindly, all of you, and wish you all well.
Thank you for your deputation, and we'll, I'll ask the councilors how they wish to handle this. Or, could I have a mover and a seconder to receive the deputation as information? Councillor Huffman and Councillor Michelli, those in favor? It's carried too. Okay, where do you want to go from here? Madam Mayor.
I'd like to move that we approve the grant schedule as presented in our agenda.
Where's that exactly?
What page is it?
Page?
Okay, so I'd like to move that we adopt or accept the grant proposal as presented on page 11 of our agenda.
What page is that? I just can't hear you.
Page 11.
Page 11.
And that we include the grant proposal in the site plan draft.
Okay, because this involves some financials, can we hear from staff with respect to where this funding would come from? I think that's the appropriate question. Or this tax break. Who's got the answer for us?
Yeah.
Pam, we'll start with you.
Yeah, sure. Through you, the chair, to Councillor or Mayor Chop, to answer your question about the funding. It is continual. CIP is continual each year on council's approval during budget, and that's that's the reason why it wasn't put in the site plan agreement. Site plan agreements are usually 1 to 3 years. If you're wanting to move a site plan forward to 6 years, as outlined on page 11. I should go back and do a little bit more information to make sure that we can do that legally, and I'm happy to bring that information forward and back to council.
Okay. Mayor Chop?
I'd just like to point out that it's not that it's costing us anything. We're not getting this tax revenue anyway. Right. So we're looking at a future tax increase. It's just that it's not going to be all at once. Perhaps the question I would like to, through you, Mr. Chair, direct it back to our presenter is whether or not they would be amenable, even if it wasn't part of the site plan agreement. We could have Mr. Loeb draft up a grant agreement for them just as a separate document to avoid this 3-year issue with the site plan control.
Okay. Do you want to chime in on that one?
Through you, Chair, that's definitely something that we can connect with Mr. Loeb about.
I don't see Mr. Loeb here in attendance, so, but
I'm happy to do that and get
GM
back
of
to council.
Planning has accepted that. Okay, Councillor Van Pass.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could staff explain to me just exactly how this works? Like the deputation talked about the hypothetical $100,000 in taxes. Do they pay that tax and then council gives a grant back each year for the 5 years, or do they just not pay it in the first place?
Go ahead, Pam.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's probably a great question for our Economic Development Officer, Chris Garwood, to answer.
Mr. Garwood?
Thank you, sir. Through the chair, how the program works is that the gentleman would make an application. We would review the application. We would come with a report and a recommendation to council as to what the recommendation is. And the program, how it works is you have to pay the taxes and it's reimbursed. So we do not disburse the funds. Even if you're approved, You have to pay your taxes, and then we give you a reimbursement. So if the taxes is 100,000, you pay me your 100,000 first. I reimburse you a portion of that taxes that you have been approved for. So if you do not pay your taxes, you do not get the tax increment part of it. Does that answer the question?
Okay, I think so. Chris, again?
A follow-up to that, Mr. Chairman, is that allowed? Like, they used to not allow municipalities bonusing on business, so how do we get around that?
Through the chair, you're absolutely correct. The only way we can incentivize a business is through the Community Improvement Plan program. And so we have 9 different programs that we have outlined in the Community Improvement Plan, and it forms part of the official plan. It goes to the ministry, and we can't divert from it. So we have to follow what we have presented to the province that we are going to be doing. So this is one of the programs that's in that plan.
Okay, Councilor Van Passen? Okay, anybody else? Questions? Yes, Councilor Huffman?
Okay, so let me just be clear, and I was paying attention to that. Is there a motion on the floor?
I believe there is, yes.
Okay.
We need a seconder, though, but who wants to second that?
Well, before we do,
Okay.
can we amend it?
Go ahead, I'll let you
Prior to?
speak.
Well, I was just wondering, and I'm quite certain that the, Mr. Bain and his group of people will follow through on this, but I really like the point in here where it talked about creating more jobs by the way of hiring Simcoe trades, purchasing material, et cetera. Is there any way that that can be in the motion, that is something that would be adhered to?
The deputy clerk advised me that that could likely be separate.
Okay.
Okay.
And it's not to say that they wouldn't be following through on that. It's just something I've been pretty vocal about in the past in terms of trying to do things as much above board but local.
Sure. Councilor Van Passen again.
Yes, from listening to our staff, is the motion on the floor jumping the gun? If there is a set process that we need to follow, they have to fill out the application?
Absolutely. And there is a legal document that needs to be signed, an agreement that is filed. There's a bit of a process.
When you bring that report to council, I'm pretty sure you know what the answer will be, but I think we have to follow that process, otherwise we can get in trouble with the
You're
province.
absolutely correct.
So, Mr. Garwood, are we not right to have the motion, or
So
can you
what
clarify
needs
it for us?
What
how
needs
we
to
should
happen, you
proceed?
need to direct staff to work with the proponents to present you with all of the facts in a report, and then we would have the draft of the agreement and so on that you would have a chance to review, because that is what mayor and clerk would be executing.
So you want a report to council?
And the second thing, through you, Mr. Chair, the budget, there needs to be a discussion on the budget of it, because under the new plan, anything that is approved by council, there needs to be a totally separate budget set aside for whatever they are going to approve.
Okay, I'm going back to the mayor because she made a motion, but I didn't have a seconder. You're telling us this is the proper way to do it, and that kind of conflicts with what the mayor was suggesting.
Well, I don't know why that would be any different, whether we give our approval now it was simply to go and draft up that agreement with Mr. Loeb. My suggestion was that we put it as a separate agreement as opposed to putting it as part of the site plan control as the presenter requested, merely to kind of facilitate and move the process along so that they don't have to deal with an issue because of the 3 years. So if you want to simply receive it as information, that's fine. But to me, it would be that we are in favor of it, of actually moving that, yes, we are in favor, go and execute the required documents and initiate the process. To just receive it as information, well, I can receive anything as information.
Okay, I'm going to ask the deputy clerk to clarify where we should go with this.
Through the chair, currently I have the motion by Mayor Chop, which is that council accept the grant proposal as presented on page 11 of the agenda package, and that Development and Cultural Services staff work with the county solicitor to draft said grant agreement. At that point, if that is correct, that does not have a seconder. Another option, just putting it to the mayor as the mover of that motion and to committee, is that you could receive this deputation for information and direct staff to work with the deputation and report back to council.
What's your pleasure, Madam Mayor?
The second, that's
Pardon me?
fine, that's adequate. I think it's clear our intentions sitting here. Myself, the only thing is, it would be prudent to get a vote on whether people agree with this proposal. Otherwise, to have Mr. Loeb engage in this, to have staff time engage in this, if when it comes back to council, we're going to vote it down, what would be the point of proceeding through that exercise? That's why I think it's prudent to have a vote to say, yes, we support this, or no, we do not support this.
Okay, I'm going to ask the deputy clerk to reread the option that you're suggesting. We'll stick to that one.
Sure, sorry. Through the mayor, just for clarification, so the one that you initially put on, Mayor Chop, is that council accept the grant proposal as presented on page 11 of the agenda package, and that Development and Cultural Services staff work with the county solicitor to draft said grant agreement.
I'll just make one amendment, that county staff be directed to, and use the second part that you had originally said, to work with.
Okay. I think you may be seated, Mr. Garwood, and I'm going to need a seconder for the mayor's motion. Councillor Rabbits is the seconder. Okay. Does everybody understand that motion? Okay. I do have a question myself as chair here, speak last, to Ms. Dusling. Is this property is zoned retail, commercial?
That's great.
Okay.
Correct, it's commercial retail.
And how does this impact the downtown Simcoe revitalization program? Do you see any concerns with retail businesses out on the Queensway and the development in downtown Simcoe that a couple members of our council are actually working on with the BIA, I believe?
Yep. Thank you, Councillor Columbus. More or less, it does not. The property is zoned and designated correctly. We've been working very closely with the development group for a number of years. It's a wonderful development for Simcoe. It has great pathways in, connections, landscaping, lighting. It will be a beautiful development in the end. So it does really not connect to the downtown.
Okay, great. Okay, I'll call the vote. Does everybody understand the motion? I'll call the vote. Those in favor? Those opposed? Any opposed? Okay, that is carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, shall we do communications and then take a break for dinner? We have a communication from Mr. Ed Wojtowicz, 649 Nelson Street West. And who's speaking to this one? Nobody? Yes, Chris?
Mr. Chair, if I may offer council just a position response to that. It's an excellent question that's been raised. Would you permit me, sir?
Yes.
Okay. The correspondence you have here talks about $190,000 to repave Nelson Street West in Port Dover. I expect that information was extracted from the capital budget the council had reviewed the last week or two. Just for clarification, there is indeed $190,000 shown in 2019, this year, to initiate work on Nelson Street. That's for the engineering component only. Recall when we talked about budgeting money for engineering services one year with the construction the following year. So when I look at 2020, the same project, we have $1.25 million budgeted to do the actual construction work. So we could certainly give Mr. Wojtowicz confidence that quite clearly $190,000, as he's noted, is not enough to construct the road. That's for the engineering design work, but the work will proceed if council approves this in 2020.
Okay, any questions? Yes, Councilor Van Passen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did talk to Mr. Wojtowicz on the weekend and made him aware of that, and we had quite a discussion. He retired, he's worked for the region and for the county. He retired a few years ago. He's got lots of good ideas on how to fix it and upgrade the water and sewer and all that, so maybe he'll send some more letters before the engineering gets done.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions? Councilor Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just would like to take this opportunity to mention that I had a conversation with Mr. Baird also about potential sidewalks, widening the roads, concerns from other community members. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to say that that conversation has happened with Mr. Baird as well, and I will continue to discuss that with him. Thank you.
Okay, mover and a seconder to receive this as information. Councilor Rabbits and Councilor Geisens, those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Do you want to take a break now? Okay. Well, what's that? Yeah, we have one staff report. I don't know how long that would take, and then we'll go. I'm hearing everybody's here, right? Okay. So we'll break for half an hour, 10 minutes after 7.